So it's got 2 doors, it's got 2 big kidney grills up front, an inline 6 under the hood, oh, and that big shiny M badge on the back bumper. But this is not an M3, it's something more. Yes, this is the all-new, never-existed-before BMW M4, and it's not an M3, not in its name and not in what it really is underneath. Now, that's almost entirely a good thing, but not completely, so let's take a closer look. I can't tell you how much I love the styling of this beast. It's so much more imposing than M3s of decades past. And it's not just the design with its hard creases and bulging hood, it's its size. This is the M4's official launch color, and it's called Austin Yellow Metallic, named after the Circuit of the Americas F1 track in Austin, Texas. And as everything is bigger in Texas, this color is certainly fitting. Compared to the previous generation car, it's 3 inches longer, 2 inches wider, and about 1 inch taller. Okay, I'll admit, on an overcast day like today, it's a little snot colored, but in direct sunlight, it looks like a block of gold. And have I ever mentioned, I love yellow cars. Despite being big with a capital B, BMW really showed its engineering wizardry with this car, because even though it's bigger, it's actually not any heavier than the outgoing model. In fact, it's lighter by a really significant 180 pounds. The specs list on this car comes with a really long list of different components that have been optimized for weight reduction, but there's only 2 that you really care about, and the first one is right above me. It's that beautiful carbon fiber roof, and another piece of carbon fiber jewelry you'll find is right underneath the hood with this beautiful strut tower brace. So does it feel any lighter? Well, I'm not so sure. I think if I could get this car out on a racetrack, and trust me, I tried, you would find that the big open spaces and the speed, this car would beg for corners like a pimple-faced teenager begs for a date. But as it stands driving on the street, it really seems to prefer the straightaways. That's entirely the result of this new engine, a twin-turbo 3-liter inline-6 that makes a touch more power than the old unit, but a lot more torque. In fact, it's 40% more torque than the old V8, and it delivers that torque across an incredibly wide power band. Do I miss the V8 engine? Sure, I miss its fun, high-revving nature, but with all the torque that this engine makes, you forget about it pretty quickly. It'll hit 60 miles an hour in just 4.1 seconds with the 6-speed manual, or order the 7-speed dual clutch, which I'm sure you will, and that number drops to just 3.9 seconds. That's almost half the original M3's 0 to 60 time. So what does it feel like? Well, not like an M3. I thought BMW would try and make this engine feel like a naturally aspirated one, but they didn't. I don't even think they tried to. Instead, they really embraced the turbocharged era that we're living in. Sure, it revs out extremely highly for a turbocharged engine, all the way up to 7,600 RPM, and there's no real turbo lag to speak of either, but the power delivery still isn't linear. Instead, it just hits you with this huge turbocharged wallop, especially when you press the M button. Press that button and the car's character changes dramatically. The exhaust volume gets turned way up and the throttle is incredibly touchy. It sounds raw, like you just ripped the mufflers off, and you can really hear those turbos working. The sound and huge bursts of thrust will have you hammering the throttle over and over. And when you do, you can instantly feel it in the rear of the car. The back end kind of lifts up a little bit and starts to wiggle around, and I'm not gonna lie, it's a little intimidating. There's something this car has that future BMWs probably won't, and that's a real manual transmission. It's good, but not amazing, with a last-minute notchiness to each gear shift. BMW manuals have felt the same since, well, forever. One unique trait it does have, however, is a rev matching feature, much like the new Porsche 911 or originally the Nissan 370Z. Interestingly, however, it actually turns off when you turn on the M mode, which is kind of odd. When you're not in M mode, the M4 actually feels more like a grand tourer on the road, and it's got an interior to match. It actually feels luxurious and not in the usual Spartan BMW way. All that doesn't come cheap though, and the M4 costs about $4,000 more than the old M3. It's still a proper coupe and not a sports car, and what that means is that you don't sit down really low and you can actually see out of it quite easily. As for these seats, well, they're plenty form-fitting if you want them to be. Some features worth pointing out in here are the heads-up display, which even shows what the current speed limit is, unless you're in M mode, and then you just get a beautiful color projection of the tachometer. Earlier, I mentioned pressing the M button, but there's actually two M buttons, both located on the steering wheel, and they allow you to configure the car to different settings. So you can have different presets for whether you want the steering to be stiffer or lighter, or how the transmission will react, how the throttle will react, and even the stability control system. And a final feature worth pointing out, BMW has actually put a little steering wheel button right here on the center console. What that allows you to do is have 3 different steering settings to help you further customize your car to make sure it suits you exactly. The BMW M4 really isn't an M3. It's not a fun little tossable toy, it's an awesomely powerful super coupe. I love this car, but it's not the type of feeling I've had for M3s past. It's more like the love I've had for a brutishly powerful M5, which means my heart is still longing for a true M3 successor. Now, with each generation of BMW car getting larger and larger, I think there's finally room below this model for a proper M-badged car. The M2's time has finally arrived.